So you found a skeleton. How would you tell it's a dinosaur? You personally, how would you decide?
Well, interesting question. I don't know. I'd have to do some research on that.
Hey everybody, welcome to Dapper Dinosaur. This is Gish with Vish number 9, I think. Is it 9? What's the number here? Let's double check. 10! 10 is 10. This is our 10th episode. Congratulations. That's, since I prefer the decimal system, we're only 2 away from a round number. Yeah. So, first things first, we got a few things to read out here. We got DM Answers in Gojira Wing for $10, who says, "We'll have to catch this later, out to a movie with my partner." Awesome. Just remind everyone that turtles are the best tetrapod, and also Godzilla Minus One is getting a US release. Yeah, end of this month, the 29th.
Mm-hmm.
I've already decided, you know what?
They've already started doing screenings locally in LA, and it is just insanely good. So
Nice.
I can't wait. Yeah.
Also, Eddie McCoy has joined the channel at the Saropsid level. Thank you very much for your generosity. That's one of the higher levels. So I really do appreciate that. Aster Ryu for $5 says, currently working on a font. So I can say for sure AIG is a page of suspiciously rendered lowercase fizz. Nice.
She's a bag of bad kerning.
Ooh, don't tell people what kerning is. That's mean. I'll take a drink though.
That's literally an example of knowledge that can drive you insane.
Yeah. If you want to understand what it's like to be an H.P. Lovecraft protagonist, just learn about kerning. Or maybe don't, because that's not something you should ever want to know what it's like to be. Because, it's cosmic horror for a reason. So yeah, just don't ever learn about kerning. Now also, Savage Antipodal Bearing Shores Cobra has said, for the Recording Booth Fund, which thank you very much, and gifted 20 Dapper Dinosaur memberships. They went to Robert Adsit, Ian Houston, Meta Jetta, Wayne Gaffney, Quiet Fern, 1027, Landon Noel, Brand Heilman, Some Awesome, Logan Fisher, 3Can Sam, Alien Bird, Nevets Kilu, I hope, sorry. I'm Not Your Grandpa, Fragmag75, Javad Clisro, Sib, Backfire Ellipsis 2000, Theodore Pietstrick, Shield Bunny, Carol Kissinger, and Katie Lewis, and I think that's it. Thank you very much. So, I'm drinking hot tea right now, so I'm going to try to take 20 sips of this without scalding off a layer of flesh. So, here we go. One.
Well, he's counting. It has now been 208 days that Sal Cordova has been bitch made. Reminder that he can end that timer at any time by watching the John Sanford series.
He sent me an email the other day.
Oh, really? Has he watched the series yet?
He didn't say so in the email. 6.
Great, cool. Gonna just assume that he hasn't.
Same. 7. 8.
Everybody get them tetrapod emojis and pelagic tunicate emojis.
Apparently you're quiet.
Yeah, I tried moving the mic closer, so let me know if that helped.
No, you're still pretty quiet.
Saying that
I have you at 200%
They're
though.
Saying, oh, You know what? Let me unplug and replug in the cord just in case.
Okay. So this is 9. 10. 11. 12. It's really hot. 13. 14. Ooh, okay, I'm gonna take a break. We're gonna finish off the last 6 in just a second when the tea cools down a little bit, because now my tongue is like all burny and tingly, and I don't like that. That's too much.
Are you getting fur tongue?
Yeah, I really am.
Okay. Also, let me know if the sound is better.
Hopefully it is. About the same. Here's what I might be able to do. I will put a gain filter on my computer audio, turn it up, and then turn the video down, which will mean you'll have to listen more closely, but it should be a little bit better. Can you say something?
Anything.
Yep.
Lots of things.
That worked. All right, here we go.
Yay.
15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20. Savage and total bearing shores Cobra. If you didn't want me to drink for it, you should have given 30 or more. So then I wouldn't count it out. But that's okay. Alright, yeah, that's much better. So,
Yeah, they're saying that they can hear me now. Good. So, yay.
Yeah. So yeah, I just upped the gain on my computer audio and I've turned on the video. It might be a little bit loud when we start out. I don't know.
Okay.
Right, so we're here to talk about Dwayne Gish. He was just on with the second law of thermodynamics after already misunderstanding the first law of thermodynamics because he doesn't know the first thing about thermodynamics. I guarantee you he doesn't know what entropy is. He couldn't measure it. He couldn't tell you which system of two systems might have more entropy. None of that. For him, entropy is just a magic thing that goes up, and that means things get worse in some broad, undefinable way that is just an appeal to emotion. That's it. That's literally all he's got. He couldn't tell you anything about the statistical nature of entropy. He couldn't tell you anything about macro or microstates, ability of a system to do work. None of that stuff. There's nothing there. All right, so we do have some drinking rules. We've already seen that if you guys gift memberships, then we will take a drink for each membership gifted up to about 30. Past 30, we kind of stop doing that. We just kind of drink what we have, go get some more stuff, and move on. We'll also take a drink if anyone super chats or milestone chats anything to the effect that AIG are a bag of dicks. Also, if you super chat or milestone chat and it includes any of the kaiju emoji, which includes Godzilla, Ghidorah, and Mothra, we'll take a drink for that. We'll also take a drink if Dwayne Gish says something that's too stupid and we just kind of have to. Or if he gets something that's actually right, but it actually has to be something he gets right out of his own brain. It can't just be a quotation that he reads. We will also be taking a drink if Dwayne Gish tells a joke that doesn't land or a story that we're pretty darn sure didn't happen. So, for instance, if he tells this wonderful story about this debate that he had with a professor that seems to be a professor of fish feeding at Berkeley on an airplane, and then everyone stood up and clapped after he proved God, yeah, we're going to take a drink for that, because I'm pretty sure none of that happened. Now, granted, that's a Kent story, but hey, you never know. We also have, if he brings up the group of people that are normally associated with Godwin's Law. Now, he doesn't actually have to break a Godwin's Law to do this, he just has to bring that group of people up. The reason I say that is because technically, in order to have broken Godwin's Law, you have to compare your opponent to those people inappropriately, right? So, because, you know, it's just a way to shut down a debate. That's all it is when you break Godwin's Law, is you're just calling someone the worst thing you can think of and then walking away, which doesn't actually resolve anything. However, I will say there are warranted comparisons. Like, you know, if maybe you had recently been bombing and shutting off water and food and power supplies to a civilian population center. I don't know. That might make for a valid comparison. Good thing none of that's happening right now in the world. Exactly. Anyway, we'll also take a drink if we have what's called a Trojan source. A Trojan source is where Dwayne Gish cites a source, which he usually doesn't, but you never know. And we look it up. And not only does the source fail to support his contention, but it actively goes against his contention, right? So, take a drink for that. So, for instance, if if Dwayne Gish, and I'm just picking another Kent Hovind type example, right? Says, you know, in Beowulf, it says that Grendel has dark hair. It doesn't, but it also doesn't say he has any other kind of hair. So, whatever. But if you then say, actually, Beowulf says that Grendel was a T-Rex, and then you look it up, which is a thing Kent Hovind says.
And Beowulf ripped his arms off
Yes,
because they were so tiny.
Yeah, yeah. In fact, Grendel's only description in Beowulf is that he's a son of Cain. You know, like the first vampire Cain. If we're going with
really
with you know, some lores of her vampires.
So yeah, we're going with Grendel being antediluvian. Cool.
Yeah. So, like, yeah, that would be something we would take a Trojan source drink for. We also have one that can only happen once per stream, which is ad hominid. If the creationist in question confuses the specimen Lucy for all the knowledge we have about any wider taxon than just that one individual, we take a drink. Now, it's only once, because when they do it once, they tend to just keep on doing it. And so, I don't want to just sit there for like 20 minutes, just continuously drinking this scalding hot tea. So, eventually it won't be scalding hot, though, because of an actual application of the second law of thermodynamics. So, yeah. let's take a look at that here with Dwayne Gish. Oh, there's also predictions. If Vishanti or I can make a good prediction where it's not clear what's going to happen, we'll take a drink. I've probably forgotten a few other ones. If one comes up, we'll take a drink. And sometimes I just call a drink trigger that I just made up on the spot and probably won't ever happen again just because I feel like whatever it was worth taking a drink for. Also, I want to say, if you want to play along, feel free to play along with something other than alcohol. I'm playing with tea today. I usually do play with alcohol, but, play with water, a vape pen. Nothing. You can just pump your fist every time we take a drink. I don't care. But if you do decide to play along with something that is intoxicating, please be careful, know your limits. Do not go out while intoxicated. Drive a car, operate heavy machinery, text your ex, none of those things. That's on you if you do, not on the channel. Know your limits. I think that covers it, and I think it is time to go into the actual talk, unless, Vishanti, you have anything you want to say real quick.
Yeah, actually. Thanks for coming out to the stream I did on Reason to Doubt's channel the other day, y'all. That was very nice. It helped me be less nervous.
Yeah,
I was nervous anyway, but it helped me be less.
A big portion of my chat was there for that. It was an excellent stream. If you haven't seen it, I would highly recommend you go check it out after this stream.
Do I need to link it in the chat?
You don't need to, but it certainly wouldn't hurt. So.
Okay, well, I'm going to grab the link really quickly as I stall for time, and then I'm going to copy that link into the chat. There you go.
Okay.
And there you go.
Awesome. Here we go.
If it's left to itself, no work is being done on it, nothing comes in from the outside, that system always deteriorates and runs down and decays.
So that's, on the one hand, kind of true, and on the other hand, kind of not, right? So, we have a Euro super chat from Inkboy who says, is the first rule of thermodynamics is that we do not talk about thermodynamics. No, that's the negative first law of thermodynamics. You've got the zeroth, the first, the second. There's a zeroth law of thermodynamics.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually pretty simple. It's if system A is in thermodynamic equilibrium with system B, and system B is in thermodynamic equilibrium with system C, then systems A and C are in thermodynamic equilibrium with each other. And it's basically the law of thermodynamics that allows, like, thermometers to work. So, that's nice. It's also the most recent law of thermodynamics that was discovered, but it was given the zeroth law because it seemed to be, like, more fundamental than the first law. So, sure, whatever. Anyway, so first, entropy does not correlate well to things like decay or disorder. Entropy is a statistical phenomenon that comes out of things like particle physics, right? And at a macroscopic scale, it can be seen as the ability of a system to do work, and that the ability of a system to do work will tend to decrease, right? So in order to do work, which is just to displace mass over some period of time, you need to have an energy gradient. You can't just have energy because it needs to have a way to flow from one place to another. So to do this, you need to have a concentration of high energy and a concentration of low energy. As you do work and you transfer energy from the high energy point to the low energy point, allowing work to happen in the process, that reduces the difference in temperature between the high and the low energy area. Once they equal out, you will no longer be able to perform work without adding energy or removing energy from the system. Or both, which is usually what happens in most cases in real life. Now, at a particle physics level, this corresponds to the number of microstates which can explain the observed macro state, right? So for instance, if you have a simple steam engine, right? Like you have a tank full of hot steam, and then you have a condenser, and you have a flywheel in the middle, right? So the flywheel is going to be what is doing work for you. Maybe you have it hooked up to a machine that's going to make socks or something. I don't know. It doesn't matter. So that's the load on the whole system. And the hot steam tank is your energy source, and the condenser is your energy sink. Okay, cool. As you move, so all those water molecules, right? They can all have a whole bunch of different states that are all described by a hot tank, and a cold tank, and a flywheel doing something. But the closer you get to equal temperatures in both, the more possible states can be, microstates, can explain that macro state, which means that those particular types of macrostates, the ones that are described by larger numbers of microstates, are statistically favorable. Because when random stuff happens, it tends to go towards the most likely type of outcome, which is why, in the macroscopic sense, we basically always see entropy going up in isolated systems. Technically, it doesn't actually have to, it's a statistical thing, but the statistical likelihood of it actually going down, getting less entropic, it's so close to zero that we just don't worry about it. Now, how much of that had to do with concepts of chaos and decay? I'm going to go ahead and say none of it. So when Dwayne Gish says, oh, everything just runs downhill, that's not true, first of all. Second of all, this increase in entropy is only in isolated systems. In open or closed systems, the law of entropy does not strictly apply. And second, yeah, it just doesn't correlate very well to human ideas of decay and chaos. So let's see what else he's got for us, but it's probably going to be more of the same.
It never, ever goes in the opposite direction.
Again, that's technically not true, although it's close enough to being true that, like, you might as well say it. So I don't know, do we drink for that?
It wasn't fully paying attention to what he said, but I'm sure it was wrong, so...
Alright, fine, we'll take a drink. I'll say I just need more caffeine. I slept horribly last night. It was too cold. I know everyone's like, oh, but you live in Tucson where it's always hot. Yeah, it was like 46 Fahrenheit, which is way colder than I'm used to.
People not understand it can get cold as hell in the desert. Like,
yeah, people don't always understand that. Yeah. Also, I had my my window cracked because earlier in the last few months, you know, that's been really nice at night because the air is like, you know, in like the 60s. But that was a mistake last night. So, whoops. All right, here we go.
I'm going to allow a famous scientist to describe that for us. This tendency, this inherent property of matter to decay and to run down and deteriorate is so unfailing, so all-pervasive, it's called a natural law.
Yes, the second law of thermodynamics is indeed a natural law. You got that right, Dwayne. We'll take a drink for it. Good job, buddy.
Amazing.
Hey, Dwayne, you gonna tell people how that's a microphone you're standing nearby, or how this is a podium that you're at? Just, okay.
Second law of thermodynamics.
At least you didn't say the second law of science. I've heard a few say that. This is the second law of science. What? The second law of science.
Now, of course, if there's a second law, there must be a first law. Indeed, there is. The first law of thermodynamics merely tells us that no matter what happens or what you do, the total quantity of energy and matter in the universe is a constant.
It actually says that about a isolated system and not the universe. Now, I personally think there's a pretty damn good chance that the universe is an isolated system, but I can't actually prove that. And if I can't prove that, then it actually doesn't mean that the universe itself as a whole has to follow the first law of thermodynamics. And also, I do like that he said that matter and energy. And technically, this allows for matter-energy conversion, right? So the sun, despite the fact that it deletes mass and increases the total amount of energy, is not violating the the first law of thermodynamics. Because that is actually a transfer of one form of energy to another. Because you can kind of think of matter as sort of like congealed energy. Like, what happens when you get energy really slow and cold?
I dislike that phrasing very much.
Is it because you don't like the word congeal?
Yeah.
It's like energy jello.
How
How about energy jam? Is that better?
Really?
Energy marmalade.
I don't feel like this isn't really improving if we keep going.
Okay.
You can change matter into energy, energy into matter, one form of energy into another form of energy.
He's right, take a drink.
But no matter what you do, the total quantity remains a constant. You cannot get something from nothing.
So,
which is because he believes in creation ex nihilo.
Yeah.
The heck, man.
Yeah, which, by the way, the Big Bang is not actually some positive total of energy popping out of nothing. Inkboy said energy Marmite.
These aren't really improving things. You know?
An intrigued feeling says, aren't there virtual particles, basically particles that pop in and out of existence? The answer to that is kinda. So, virtual particles are very useful in particle physics for getting to, like, figuring out the mathematics of how to predict particle interactions. However, it's not clear that that mathematical formula actually corresponds to the real existence of virtual particles, in part because, by their very nature, they're basically impossible to observe on their own. So it's not very clear whether or not virtual particles really physically exist, or if they're just a simplification that we use in mathematics to help us predict something, and that actually what's going on is something else. Of course, you could also get into things like mathematical realism, where you can ask, is there a difference between something really existing and it actually existing in the math that we use to predict the behavior of a system? And you know what? I don't know. I'm not a philosopher. So when it comes to, are virtual particles real? I'm just going to go with, I don't know. But they seem to do things, so sure.
And you cannot take something and make nothing out of it. Now,
I mean, you can...
Another thing, you don't get freedom for free. You won't stay wise with the feast sleep still in your eyes, no matter what your dream might be.
April Van Ryan proposes energy mache. That's a pretty good one. So we're going to go with energy mache? Okay. All right.
I think I could live with that.
Yeah. I mean, it's probably been a while since you've been eating paste anyway. Did you eat paste as a kid? Come on, be honest.
No, but I used to sit in front of my TV with like a jar of peanut butter and like a tablespoon and just like lick the peanut butter off the spoon for hours at a time. It's good shit.
I'll be honest. I still every once in a while like just a little bit of peanut butter with a slight sprinkle of salt. Pretty good.
Creation doesn't violate that natural law, you see, because God created the natural laws.
It doesn't violate the natural laws, literally because God can violate the natural laws. Okay, Dwayne, we're just going to take a drink, because that's what violating the natural laws is. My goodness. It doesn't count as violation of natural laws if God does it. No, it does.
All the Canadians in the chat are about to lose their Canadian card.
Are they?
Yeah, because I'm out here belting out Rush songs and nobody is commenting on it, y'all.
Oh, that also reminds me. Hey, happy Remembrance Day / Veterans Day to all my viewers who either have served in the military, are currently serving because you will be vets, or who have immediate family members who have served, because you've at least had to put up with some of the nonsense that comes out of the military. So
yeah, I come from a very storied military family, so yeah.
If you're a vet and you're in the US, there's a number of restaurants that will give you a free meal today if you feel like going and getting a free meal. You do have to prove you're a vet, though.
God is not bound by these natural laws which now govern our universe. But that is certainly one of the natural laws.
The thing is, even if it's not special pleading, even if we're going to accept that as part of the definition for God, it still means that when God violates the laws of nature, the laws of nature have been violated.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that doesn't go away just because you said, well, God gets to do that. Okay, great. It's still a violation of the laws. And the thing is, like, there's a lot of people who will say that God is in fact the ultimate creator of the universe, and that the Big Bang and evolution and whatnot are the ways in which the creator of the universe chose to create. And quite frankly, I don't really care if you want to put God at the beginning of the Big Bang. Like, sure, fine, have fun with it. And yet, there's Dwayne here like, oh, the Big Bang is this atheistic thing that violates the laws of physics. Just no, none of that's true.
I love that April Van Ryn is saying that they know all the words to YYZ. For those of you that know why I'm laughing.
This universe. The second law merely tells us that everything runs down and decays.
Doesn't tell us that.
Now let's see what a famous scientist has to say about that. Isaac Asimov.
He's a scientist? I thought he was a science fiction writer, but okay.
Yeah,
Cool.
I mean, you know what? Let's find out. What was Isaac Asimov's education? Because, like, maybe he's got a really cool PhD and I just don't know. Right? Like, I don't... What do I know? He was a professor. So, let's see. Professor of biochemistry at Boston University. Not really sure that counts as far as, like, someone who
astronomy goes.
Trust, yeah, with astronomy and cosmology and whatnot, but, like, nothing.
All right, let him cook. Let him cook.
Let him go.
I had a debate with Isaac Asimov in the pages of Science Digest, October of 1981.
Debate in the pages of a magazine. Okay, man.
I mean, look, that is probably something that happened. But my guess is that most of the readers were seeing, you know, a smart sci-fi author and biochemistry professor debating a clown for their own amusement.
Beat me, bro.
The editor
writes a letter to the editor.
Called it the Genesis War. The editor had each one of us prepare an initial statement, and then the statements were exchanged, and we wrote a rebuttal to the statement of the other scientist. Isaac Asimov, of course, was widely known. He wrote over 300 books. Highly recognized scientist. He was
currently he's got a TV show going based on his foundation books, loosely based on his foundation books, I should add.
That reminds me of the Electric Dream series. I think it's on Amazon, and it's you know what? I am so mad at my brain right now because I had the neural pathway to this author already mapped out, and as soon as I started speaking, it just dissolved.
All those potentiated neurons just kind of fell off, huh?
Who wrote Blade Runner? Who wrote
Do Androids
in a Standard
Philip K.
Arcade?
Dick.
Thank you. It's Philip K. Dick's Electric Dreams. It's on Amazon. Check it out. It's really good.
Yeah, because Blade Runner is based
Love
on
anthology.
Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? And then I saw a tag from a bookstore that truncated the title in order to add the author last name for...
Do Androids Dream?
It was Do Androids Dream of Electric Dick. And I was like, oops, that was perhaps not the best formatting choice.
I mean, maybe.
Yeah, maybe they do. I don't know.
Maybe they
Rose
do.
was gifted 5 Dapper Dinosaur memberships. They went to Uomovero, Shauna Davis, Navy Jet Fixer, Nimax, or Nimax? I'm not sure. And Derek Henrik. Thank you very much. Here's 5 drinks. 1, 2, 3.
I'm getting called out in the chat for calling it YYZ instead of YYZ.
Yeah, it is Z in most places other than the US. And 5.
Well, if I wasn't American, I would probably say Z.
Fair. All right, here we go.
an evolutionist and an atheist. I don't want to imply that all evolutionists are atheists, but he was.
That's true in both cases. I'm actually impressed.
He's doing.
I mean, most creationists nowadays just completely conflate those two things, despite the numerous people who don't reject science and are theists anyway. So you know what? There's a drink for props to you, Dwayne. You're doing better than most of your modern followers. Aster Ryu for $5 says, AIG is the bag what your library thinks androids dream of.
Nice.
There you go.
Nice.
Taking a drink for that. Yeah, it was the most unfortunate of, or fortunate, depending on your standpoint, of formatting choices.
Let's see what he has to say about the second law of thermodynamics.
Okay.
In the Smithsonian Institution Journal, June of 1970, Isaac Asimov said this: another way of stating the second law, then, is the universe is constantly getting more disorderly.
Man, why did he put scare quotes around the word disorderly? Do you think maybe he didn't actually mean that as a literal thing that we could easily map onto the human concept of disorderly? You think Dwayne here is gonna talk about the fact that there's scare quotes in there?
Nah.
No, I don't think so either.
Viewed that way, we can
Yeah, it's unwelcome nuanced, definitely.
see the second law all about us. We have to work hard to straighten a room, but left to itself, it becomes a mess again very quickly and very easily. Even if we never enter it, it becomes dusty and musty. How difficult to maintain houses and machinery and our own bodies in perfect working order. How easy to let them deteriorate. In fact, all we have to do is nothing, and everything deteriorates, collapses, breaks down, wears out, all by itself. And that is what the second law is all about. End of quote. Well, if that's what the second law of thermodynamics is all about, the most well-tested law.
I mean, it is at like an 8th grade level, which is probably what is the level that Isaac Asimov was writing to, because when you're doing like pop sci articles, you're not hitting for like senior in high school level, because that's not where most people stay with their scientific literacy after high school. It goes down. So yeah. And also, I'm going to give him a few more minutes, but if he doesn't mention those scare quotes, taking a drink. For confirmed prediction from Vishanti.
Known in science, evolution is in trouble. What does it say? Everything wears out and decays and deteriorates. Everything.
You just going to ignore the fact that you already acknowledge it only applies in isolated systems? You're going to ignore that? Yeah, I think so. Let's take a drink.
Even the universe, what did it say? The universe is constantly getting more disorderly. The entire universe is wearing out and running down. Now that was quite a surprise to scientists. Shouldn't have been. Because in Psalm 102, verse 26, speaking of the heavens and the earth, the Bible says they are like a suit of clothes that's wearing out.
All right, so he's not going to talk about the scare quotes, which is fun. Let's just take a drink. What, are you surprised? You're the one who predicted it.
No, his whole quoting of the Psalms there, it's like a suit of clothes, it's wearing out. I'm like, okay, man, I know this is not going to surprise your audience, but if you want to, disprove a scientific theory or counter a scientific fact or address, maybe laws of physics or something, you don't go to the Bible or a holy text. Like,
especially not a bunch of poems that are written for various reasons, none of which are actually to teach people, how the world works. I
mean, we don't get doctrine out of the Psalms, man. It's just there for, like, supporting.
I will say, at least he said psalm and not psalms when he quoted a psalm. Because I was.
Which one was that? 112? Wasn't it?
I think so. I think it was probably 112. Check. And being a Protestant, he's probably using the Masoretic text numbering, if that helps. I just lost my train of thought. Oh, right. Yeah, I've been scripting a series of videos focusing on one Dr. Jennifer Hall Rivera. And she likes to say Psalms 32:14, and I hate it every single time she does it, because in case you guys didn't know, the book of Psalms is a collection of individual psalms, each of which is a psalm, and a psalm is a particular poem. Now, you can come at me and talk about whether or not we should follow the numbering from the Septuagint or the Masoretic text. I don't really care. Either way, you should cite a psalm as psalm number, followed by verse numbers. So, Psalm 32, 1 through 4. Not Psalms 32, 1 through 4. Did you find it?
No, because I need him to say which one it is.
Oh, I'll see if we can't back up
maybe rewind it a couple seconds.
Surprised the scientists shouldn't have been, because in Psalm 102, verse 20.
Oh, it's 102, my bad.
Verse
26, speaking of the heavens and the earth, the Bible says they are like a suit of clothes that's wearing out, running down. When that was written, most people did not believe that. They believed the universe had always been here and would always be here.
I actually don't know if that's the case for people in... Actually, I know that that's not the case for a lot of people in the ancient Near East. Kip Davis, would you like to weigh in here in the chat on whether or not the people surrounding the authors of the book of Genesis thought that the earth was eternal, or if they thought that it had a beginning? Because my understanding is that the creation myths in the Bible are heavily influenced by other ancient Near East creation myths that had similar events, like, the slaying of Tiamat, creating the separation between the waters above and below, and fashioning the earth and whatnot. I don't know, though. I'm not an expert.
This is unsurprisingly him completely like reading this out of context and just cherry picking because he wants it to
I'm shocked.
say what he wants it to say. I know. It's almost like he doesn't know how poetry and parallelisms work or anything like that.
Parallelism? What's that?
Because I'm reading it. I know, right? I'm reading it in Hebrew and I'm like, okay, man, I don't think you really know what's going on here.
Well, what is going on? Help us out.
Well, I don't want to read it hyper literally because that's not gonna make sense. But basically, I'll read it in English first. You laid the foundation of the earth from old, and the work of your hands are the heavens. They will perish, but you will endure. And yes, like a garment, they will grow old. Like a cloak, you will change them, and they will be changed, but you and your years will have no end. It's contrasting the eternality of God with, like, finite nature of creation.
Okay.
I don't think he really cares about that, though.
No, I doubt that he does.
Yeah, but also, I think there's more to be dug into when it talks about the heavens and the earth being, like, a garment that, or a cloak that he just takes off and changes. Like, there's a lot more cosmological context going on here, but I don't think we have enough time to get into it.
I don't know. Well, let's see what else he's got to say.
The Bible says not so. It's wearing out. It's running down. Wearing out like a suit of clothes. Now that's what the second law of thermodynamics says. You see, our sun...
wearing down like a suit of clothes. It says that they're going to grow old like a cloak, and God's going to take them off and change them. And
why would you change a cloak if it isn't wearing out?
You know what? I'll let you take this one. It's hurting my brain too much.
Present theories are correct. It's burning up billions of tons of fuel every second. Now that's true of every other star in the universe. Therefore,
Ian Kiambi says, Godless Engineer is the only atheist in history who's ever lost a debate to Kent Hovind, G-Man, and virtually all creationists. I did see the G-Man debate, and it was a debate on slavery. It wasn't even a creationism debate. It was, like, is slavery justifiable? And it was a debate with G-Man, and the moderator was Kyle Curtis. This was during that weird period after Kyle Curtis had stolen the Non Sequitur show, and before Steve had gotten it back, and then, alienated every single last one of his audience except for, like, his roommate. So, it was during that wild period, and, eventually Kyle Curtis, who was the moderator, jumped in on the side of GE, and still, it's the only time I've seen G-Man win a debate. I'm not going to say I came away from it thinking that slavery is okay, but I came away from it thinking that those two couldn't defend why it's not, which seems really easy to me, but what do you know? The Kent Hovind debate, I mostly appreciate the Kent Hovind debate because of just how many times Kent Hovind said whale penis. Other than that, whatever.
You see, if there is no God, or if God would not intervene, and we know that he will from 2 Peter chapter 3, but if there is...
Therefore, don't worry about environmentalism. That's always where that ends up going.
Yep.
If there's no God, then the universe would die.
Yeah. That's called argument from consequences, Dwayne, right? So, if I go ahead and say to my doctor, no, I don't actually have pancreatic cancer, because that would mean I'd have to go through chemo or radiation, and that would suck. You know what that means for my cancer? Nothing. Oh, by the way, this is not Dapper Dinosaur announcing that he has pancreatic cancer. That's not what's happening here. It was just an example. So, it doesn't matter how much it sucks if the thing is true that you think might be true. It's completely irrelevant. Like, creationists will also use it with things like moral decay, like, as a result of teaching kids atheism, that means that, murder is up even though it's down, or that teen pregnancy is up even though it's down, or that abortions are happening more even though they're going down in states that actually have legal abortion, and staying about the same or going up in states that don't, so there's that. But even if all those things were true, it wouldn't matter.
I'm going to ask a question of Kip right now, and he can answer me either in the chat or in a Discord. Psalm 102, verse 26, Lepanaim, Haaretz, Yasadta. Why are we using the Lamed prefix and then discussing the faces of the earth? Like, you established the faces of the earth, but they translate it of old. What's the connection there, if you happen to know?
Yeah, that's not normally how I would
you know.
translate the that prefix. It's the same
Yeah,
prefix
just
happens
like-
in Arabic too. It's actually one of the nice things about
Yeah.
those two languages is pretty much all the prefixed prepositions just exactly the same.
I was talking to somebody a couple weeks ago that literally didn't understand like language families and how cognates work. And so when I was discussing like the Jewish practice of harem, which has only been done a very, very, very rare amount of times, I said, yeah, I mean, it's kind of related to the word haram. And he goes, oh, I know what that means. And then I was like, yeah, it's because they're cognates. They're both Semitic languages. And he just looked astounded. And I was like, okay, I think we have some knowledge gaps fill in here.
Hey, you know what? Not everyone knows about that, and that's okay. It's you gotta learn. All right, Crank McCranium has gifted a Dapper Dinosaur membership. It went to Ernex. Thank you very much. I'll take a drink. All right, here we go.
Because you see, the day would come inevitably when every star in this entire universe will have burned up all of its fuel. And it doesn't make any difference whether we have paid our utility bills or not.
Yes, congratulations, Dwayne. You figured out that in a trillion years, the things that you do probably won't matter. However, you're not going to live for a trillion years, so you could just be concerned about things like, you know, what's happening to you while you're alive, and maybe for a few decades after you die, and because those are the things you could reasonably have a chance of, influencing. Or, yeah, I mean, you could just slip into nihilism because in a trillion years, no one will care whether or not you paid your power bill. Personally, I'm happy that no one will care if I paid my bills in a trillion years. But it's also not a reason for me not to pay my bills, so I am still paying them.
The lights are going to go out. And there's not going to be any more activity. There'll not be any life anywhere in this universe.
That's going to take a lot. Well, I don't know about life, but no light or activity is going to take a lot longer than the last star going out. That'll actually happen as the last few black holes finally basically evaporate away as a result of Hawking radiation, because as time goes, they emit Hawking radiation, which saps their mass. And towards the end of this, basically the rate of Hawking radiation mass loss increases inversely proportional to the mass of the black hole, which means that towards the end of the life of a black hole, it will actually explode brightly, and it will be something you could see if you were around at the time. So it's definitely not the case that the last stars will be the last events in the universe. It will actually be the decay of the last black holes, most likely. So, of course, that also depends on whether or not protons can decay, in which case then the only remaining normal matter will be iron, and then that will eventually start to decay away too. Of course, we don't actually know if protons can decay, so that's up in the air. But no matter what, it won't be the last stars going away. The universe will still have some activity left to do after that.
Now, the universe would still be here, what's left of it, but it would be dead.
It would be inanimate. Can't be really dead unless it's alive, but it's a minor thing.
You see, the challenge I've given to evolutionists is, well, if that's true, if the natural laws, natural processes, which now govern this universe, are causing its inevitable death and destruction, and if, as you believe, that's all there ever has been, these natural laws and processes are all there ever has been, and or ever will be, how could these very same natural laws which are destroying the universe, how could they create it?
Oh, that's actually a pretty good question. Okay, so first we have to acknowledge that the start of the Big Bang, right? The very, like T equals whatever, like Planck time over 1, right? What's going on is that the universe is at an extremely high energy level everywhere. It's extremely dense, extremely high energy. We sometimes call that hot, but this is an energy level where temperature doesn't really make sense anymore, right? Because, yeah, believe it or not, there is actually a maximum temperature, and if you add more energy to a system that's at the maximum temperature, what happens is it doesn't get hotter. Other things start to happen, which are weird. Anyway, so, now, where did all this energy come from? Don't know. Maybe it was actually some kind of version of virtual particle creation, and that the total actual energy is 0 once you sum all of it together, because you have to sum these together with like vectors and whatnot. I don't know, maybe. So we don't know where that came from, but that was an extremely low entropy state. Now, if you remember from my example, which was one of the more basic examples, it's kind of how thermodynamics was created in the first place, where we have a steam tank, a little fan in the middle that spins, that's our turbine, I don't know, whatever. That's certainly not a thing you wear on your head. And we have our condenser tank on the other side. That right there, that doing the work of spinning that turbine, right? That means that the system connected to that turbine can start to do things. It can actually perform tasks. Like when I said earlier that, like, I'll just say now, like maybe it's making, like I said, socks, right? So maybe it's running a machine that is taking thread, or twine, I guess. Not twine. What am I thinking of? Yarn? Am I thinking of yarn? That's it, yarn. There's too many words for like bits of fiber that are in long strands that are like twisted together. We got like ropes, lines, twine, yarn, thread. It's too many things. Anyway, I'm gonna go with yarn this time.
Date from the Hebrew grammarian. Apparently, this isn't a construct of the word panav, meaning face. It's actually an archaic use of the preposition meaning before. So, just checking on that. But I'm like, okay. Apparently, it's so archaic, I was completely unaware of it, which doesn't say a lot because my grammar's not that great. But yeah, we're also having.
Sorry,
I'm having a side conversation about Hillel and Shammai, who you'll be shocked to learn had a disagreement over whether the heavens or the earth were created first, and both of them brought proof text from Genesis. So,
I cannot believe that Hillel and Shammai would disagree on such a thing.
No, I can't believe.
It's not like they disagreed on more or less everything.
I know, right?
I feel like a lot of the time they were just waiting for the other one to say something so that they could just disagree with it.
There's a meme, I can't remember if it's from like Community or Parks and Recs, but they caption it Hillel and Shammai arguing, and so like Shammai says something and the meme is, I wasn't listening, but I strongly disagree. Like, yeah, kind of feels pretty accurate.
Yeah. Vadim Slamovsky Redchenko says, are you going to summon a Maxwellian demon? Let's hope not. Okay, so when we take this input of yarn, right, into our machine that's being powered by our steam engine that we just talked about, we take a bunch of spools of yarn and we turn them into socks. Now, most people would consider socks to be more ordered than a spool of yarn, right? It's a more complex pattern. There's interweaving, all that stuff, right? Okay, cool. How do we go from a state of relative disorder, which is okay, into a state of more highly ordered, which in this case actually can roughly correspond to lowering the entropy, right? Because the arrangement of yarn into a sock is less likely than the arrangement of yarn into a spool, just from a statistical standpoint, because it's so much more complex. Fair enough. Well, we did it by using that energy gradient. So what that means is, all that has to happen for life to evolve and not violate the second law of thermodynamics is for there to be an energy gradient available that it can use to create more and more complex structures. That's it. Now, saying that does not solve the open questions in the origin of life, right? That is not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is just that if the question is, how can life form and evolve given the second law of thermodynamics? The simple answer is, as long as there is a persistent energy gradient and entropy is increasing in the wider system, like the solar system as a whole, which it is because the sun is always increasing its entropy as it burns through its fuel, then life can, under those conditions of a constant energy gradient, get more complex and go lower in entropy without actually violating the second law of thermodynamics. Further, life is one of the most efficient chemical systems we know of at increasing entropy. Life devours energy gradients all over the place, and then more quickly than most other natural phenomena, reduces that energy gradient to zero. So, I mean, think about how much chemical energy is in a steak, right? So we're going to have like a few hundred kilojoules or so, right? Now, how long would it take for that chemical energy gradient to go away if you sealed the steak in a vacuum chamber and irradiated it to get rid of any kind of bacteria? I mean, probably centuries, right? Like, what would stop it from, like, it would just slowly decay as just stochastically some of the chemical bonds broke. Now think about how fast it takes for you to get that chemical energy when you eat a steak. You're probably hungry 5 hours later because you burned through most of that energy. That's because
Rush B.
And that's because
Where's
life
Sloan when I
forms,
need her?
humans included, are great at getting rid of energy gradients and thereby increasing entropy faster than the world otherwise would without life. Life is fundamentally an entropic phenomenon.
You see, based upon the second law of thermodynamics, we know the universe could not create itself.
No, actually, we don't. That's just nonsense. Let's take a drink.
Old Rashbi, Shimon Bar Yochai, like, splitting the difference because Hillel's like, the earth was created first. Shammai said, no, the heavens were created first because, they're using which word came first in the particular verse they're quoting. And Rashbi, known for his laser eyes, is like, no, they happened at the same time. And then yet another rabbi pops in and says, hey, they're mentioned interchangeably first because they're both equally important. So, yeah.
So what's the actual answer that we should go with?
The answer is yes.
There you go. It's a good answer.
Mm-hmm.
The second law of thermodynamics always applies without exception.
Dude, you already stated yourself that it only applied in some circumstances. You correctly identified that it was not applicable to open systems. What are you doing? Why are you lying to my face while being contradictory to yourself? Esther Ryu says, humans are unentropic function. Mother effers, when I say it's due to the fall. Joke. Yeah. Yeah. That is probably something that they would say. Like, humans were only entropic because of the fall. Before that, poop could have crawled back into Adam and Eve's colon and then turned into an apple, and then they could have thrown it up. Which, by the way...
Humans didn't even have waste before the fall, man. They didn't poop. Come on.
Well, then where'd all that stuff go when they ate things? Just stay
they absorbed it. All of it was all nutrients. No waste.
Oh, so they're like huts.
Yeah.
Because according to some Star Wars law, according to some Star Wars lore, the huts don't poop. They just get bigger and bigger. Which means, as far as I can tell, they're just literally full of crap.
Yeah.
Yeah. My Unfinished Journey says, alt accounts are the scourge of the internet. I'll say this. I have a few alt accounts here and there that I use so that I can exist online without people knowing who I am. Because I'm not famous, but like, in the kinds of places I like to go, I tend to have at least a few people who recognize me, and sometimes I don't want to be there and be recognized as Dapper Dinosaur. I just want to exist in a space as just a regular participant. And so, yeah, I have a few alt accounts for reasons like that. I'm not going to tell you what they are, because then you'd recognize me, which would defeat the whole point. But on the other hand, I don't use them to, like, go around mocking people or, like, have weird arguments with myself to show how smart I am or something. So there is that. Off Journey says, for $2 says, everything My Unfinished Journey says is a lie. Yes. Of course. That's an alt account. And then My Unfinished Journey for $2 says, Off Journey is right. Which, wait, that's a paradox. Oh no!
No!
Because if everything that Off Journey says is right, that means that Unfinished Journey must be lying, but he said that Off Journey is right, which means, oh my goodness, my brain is going to explode. Thank you for the paradox.
To an isolated system. An isolated system is a system on which nobody's doing any work on it. Nothing comes in from the outside. It's an isolated system.
Yeah, that isolated part is important, but also the Earth isn't an isolated system, and that's what we're ultimately talking about, right? We're talking about life, which we only know of on Earth. Earth is, at best, a closed system. Closed systems are systems in which the second law of thermodynamics does not strictly apply, because they can get extra energy in. So, we'll think back to our steam engine, right? We have our steam tank, and we have our condenser. Now, if we just start with hot steam, and we send the steam over to the condenser, and it condenses, that's it. That's all we get, right? But what if I have this thing where the condenser tank is actually higher than the steam tank, and I have a pipe running back to the steam tank, so the condensed water goes back to the steam tank, And then I do this thing called lighting a fire underneath the steam tank, which boils the condensed water, allowing it to recirculate through the system. Suddenly, as long as I still keep as the system I'm talking about, the 2 steam tanks and the turbine, and whatever it's attached to, the second law of thermodynamics does not strictly apply to that system because I can add energy to that system to restore the energy gradient. That's it. That's all it takes. Now that system does not have to run down and run out of the ability to do work, as long as I can also keep feeding energy into it. Now, you can say, oh, well, yeah, but you can't feed that fire literally forever. That's true. I have to then think about a bigger system, like the Earth or the universe, right? But if all I'm considering is this one part of the system as a system that is no longer isolated, it's closed, during the duration of this, process, the second law of thermodynamics is not operating in that system. And here's the fun thing. What counts as a system in thermodynamics? Sorry. It's arbitrary. You do what's convenient for you to think about. So you can say, oh, well, the universe is increasing entropy. Great. That's not the system under consideration. And life, you can consider the biosphere on Earth to be a system under consideration. It's not an isolated system, which means it doesn't have to worry about the second law of thermodynamics. Now, you can isolate parts of life down and treat them as isolated systems in certain time frames, right? Like if you're doing the Lenski long-term experiment, right? All the energy in there is in the growth medium. And once it's gone, that's it. The bacteria can't keep going. That's why they later have to get it refilled, right? Okay, cool. So during the experimental growth run, you can treat that flask as an isolated system, right? Because you're not adding new energy from outside that's at least not usable by the bacteria. You're not adding new matter in the form of that chemical energy. So effectively, that's an isolated system. And that system does follow the laws of thermodynamics. But if you take a wider view, suddenly it's no longer an isolated system because you are going to be adding new growth medium the next day. Okay? But then if you take an even wider view of the entire universe, oh, it's probably an isolated system again. That's one of the things about thermodynamics you have to realize very early on is what your system is fundamentally arbitrary, and you pick what is convenient to your current analysis. So, yeah, that's me going on a rant about thermodynamics, which is weird. Okay.
Everything that takes place within that system is a process of self-transformation. The second law of thermodynamics is that we'll go in one direction and one direction only, and that's downward.
It's not downward because
unless you add energy. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and it doesn't apply in non-isolated systems because again, like Vishanti said, you can add energy. All right, here's the thing though. We are right at a break point. So what we're going to do right now is I'm going to put us on break. I'm going to get myself another cup of tea because I still need more caffeine because a rough night and morning. And I'm just going to keep pumping caffeine in, hoping that eventually that makes me mostly functional. In the meantime, though, please enjoy the musical stylings of one Beethoven. And we are back. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for sticking with me. Those of you who did, which let's see. Actually, seems like it's almost everyone. Thank you very much. We did not have too many people who bailed during the intermission. So, in case you guys don't know, one, the YouTube crackdown on ad blocker is not significantly increasing the amount of money I make on ads. So, if you were hoping that this would be a financial boon, it's not. Also, I've heard that apparently installs of ad blockers has like more than doubled for some ad block programs since this started, because all it really did was just bring attention to the fact that ad blockers even exist in the first place. Yeah, and also apparently there are now more sophisticated ad blockers coming on that will bypass the YouTube block on ad blockers anyway. So thanks, YouTube, for shooting.
Mine have already adjusted,
both of us.
so
yeah,
suck it, YouTube.
Thanks for shooting both of us in the foot. Anyway, that being said, what it means is that, if anything, support from viewers is more important than ever. This channel simply could not persist in the way that it does now, where you guys get minimum 3 shows a week. I just couldn't. I would have to spend too much time doing other things that make money. So if you are someone who's currently not supporting financially, but you're interested, we've got a number of ways to do that. So we've got the Patreon linked in the description. You get a 15% discount if you go annual on that. So, you can go from $12 a year at the $1 level down to just over $10 a year, which, I think that's pretty good. There's multiple tiers with different rewards at different tiers. All of the tiers get access to all my early access stuff, which currently is about 5 months ahead. So hours and hours and hours of content. This week was there was a new almost hour-long video put up. I'm currently working on the animation for the next video. The frames have been uploaded to Sheepit. So, yeah, there's another video coming out relatively soon. Hopefully, like Tuesday or Wednesday. You also get access to the Discord server, which is usually one of the more reliable ways to get a hold of me, is to either tag me in that Discord server, or since you're in the Discord server, you have the ability to DM me even if we're not friends on Discord. So you can do it that way. That's a pretty reliable way to get a hold of me if you really need to. There's also the channel memberships, which have almost the exact same rewards. They also get you access to the channel emojis, like Gupdu3 just demonstrated, with the disgusting pelagic tunicate. And
I was going to say, who doesn't want to spam pelagic tunicates?
No one should want to spam pelagic tunicates. They should all want to spam patriotic, hardworking, American sessile
Dutch tunicates.
Dutch tunicates.
There's also the triangle meme, which is another personal favorite, because it's just way too accurate.
There's also a Shanti.
Yeah.
Which usually comes out when
it's
yodeling
starts. It's my brain damage face, because I take a lot of that.
So yeah, that also has basically the exact same perks. You get early access to videos, you get access to the Discord server, but you also do get those emojis. Now, if a monthly or an annual thing isn't your style, but you still want to help out, there's a merch store linked in the description. I also have an Amazon wish list if you want to help me out there. There's a few things that are just like upgrades for the channel, like a new monitor or a recording booth. But there's also a whole bunch of stuff that's just for me, like a Carolina Reaper sausage. If you want me to have a Carolina Reaper sausage, you can buy me one. If you want me to have some candy, you can buy me that. If you want me to have an RPG book, there's a bunch of those. That's probably actually the vast majority of my wish list is RPG books. And actually, I just recently started playing the Alien RPG in a little few session group, and I'm having a lot of fun. I can't tell you everything about it though, because there are secrets. Goop23 for $2 says, late because daylight saving time messed me up, but AIG is a bag of dicks, so we'll take a drink for that. Thank you very much, Goop23. Esther Ryu says, pelagic tunicates, go! Yes, go! Get out of here. Leave for $1.99.
Oh, go to the chat and post more.
No, oh my goodness, the chat is just becoming absolutely disgusting. How could any of you do this to me?
Every accusation's a confession.
Also, Iapetus says the Alien RPG is so fun. Yeah, I'm having a lot of fun with it so far. So,
Wait.
oh, we're doing cinematic mode. because basically I wanted to just give it a go, and I felt like cinematic mode would probably be an easier sell to a bunch of otherwise random people. Inkboy, who's been a member for 19 months since at the Amnio level, wastes his milestone chat with just a mess of pelagic tunicates, which is gross and disgusting, and I'm going to listen to Dwayne Gish, because that's better than looking at all these disgusting pelagic tunicates.
It will deteriorate, it will decay. It will go from order to disorder, from complex to simple. Never, ever will it become more highly organized, more complex, more highly ordered. Never, never, never.
Oh, except, like you said, that doesn't apply to non-isolated systems, so fun times, we'll just take a drink. Ooh, it's scalding hot again. Yeah, actually, Ben started boiling this water before I even went on break. So, like, I got this boiling, like, real fast. And it is
I think you're going to need some entropy to the rescue.
Seriously, yes, entropy, come save me. We need to get an entropy man as, like, the next superhero. Just cools down tea really quick. Entropy man, my tea is too hot. I'll save you. And then he just comes over and your tea just gets cooler and the room gets ever so slightly warmer.
Yeah.
Unidentified flying demon pelagic tunicate, who's been a member for 7 months, is at the tetrapod level, understandably, but still in a wasteful manner, spends their milestone chat to send a smaller, but still a mess, of pelagic tunicates. 5 in this case. Thank you very much for being a member. I really do appreciate it.
And yet evolution is believed the universe started with its Big Bang, its chaos and disorder of the Big Bang.
But see, here's where the whole idea of chaos mapping onto entropy doesn't work, right? Because the universe was at its lowest entropy state when it was this mess of quark gluon plasma with energy levels so high that even the word temperature kind of loses meaning. That's when it was at its lowest entropy, which is itself an example of the fact that entropy does not always map well onto human ideas of order and chaos. Like, you might say that the sun seems really disordered with all these roiling jets of, magnetized plasma going all over this place and coronal mass ejections and storms and all this nonsense, right? And the fact that it actually rotates different speeds at different, latitudes, what's up with that? Whole bunch of nonsense. And yet, as far as the, on the scale of the entire solar system, actually doesn't have all that much entropy compared to, how much entropy that amount of mass could have. So, yeah, this does not really work out well. It turns out that chaos and order are really bad ways to conceptualize entropy, despite what Isaac Asimov might have said. Because it turns out that just like Darwin, just like Richard Dawkins, and just like Dwayne Gish for that matter, Isaac Asimov isn't the king of science.
Or a prophet of science.
Yep. He's none of those things. He's not the, the messenger of the all-powerful science-mo. That's not him. He's just a guy who tried to explain a concept, and I think a way that was unhelpful ultimately, given how pseudoscientists are going to take it. But his audience also probably wasn't a bunch of pseudoscientists who were, chomping at the bit. Is it champing at the... It's champing at the bit. Stupid words. Anyway, to misinterpret what he was saying.
It's like when people spell rain with or without the G, and it's always the wrong one.
It is? People mix that up?
Give free rein, and they spell it like the reign of a horse, and I'm just like, no!
Nathaniel Brahman is native to Mexico, great. I might just not be paying attention.
Okay.
Also, a lot of my consumption of content has gone to audio, because of so much of it is just straight up geared towards finding content to cover for the channel. If you look at my YouTube recommendations, it's full of creationist nonsense. And then other than that, it looks a lot like your YouTube recommendations, Vishanti, because I've seen those too.
Yeah.
Nathaniel Brahman is native to Mexico, great, member for 18 months, and at the Techbot level sends 4 patriotic, hard-working, sessile tunicates, and then 1 pelagic tunicate in between them. So thank you very much. As to you for 199 says, Asimov is the prophet of robots, though. / joke. Yeah. Look, I really like his robot series. Although I will say, I was a little confused as to why he felt in Prelude to Foundation like he needed to connect the Foundation series to his robot series. I didn't actually think that was necessary, and I kind of disliked that whole approach because, like, he had also connected his Nemesis story, which was originally just a standalone story, into the Foundation thing, and then like the Foundation series like became his Dark Tower series, but it wasn't originally intended to be that, so it felt weird and awkward, right? Because Stephen King wrote the Dark Tower series intentionally to connect all of his other works. Okay, cool.
Mm-hmm.
And so that idea permeates the entire series, and it works. But Foundation was not meant to be that, but by Prelude to Foundation, it had become that, and it was weird, and I don't like that fact. It's why Prelude to Foundation is my least favorite of the Foundation books. But that's enough about old school sci-fi nerdery. Here's more Dwayne Gish, which is like fantasy. I think he's more operating in the world of fantasy than sci-fi.
The simplicity of hydrogen gas and converted itself into this incredibly complex universe.
Yeah, that's because complexity doesn't map well onto entropy. The fact that it was, first of all, turning hydrogen into helium all the way up until iron, right? You're actually gaining energy from these situations. So you're releasing a bit of mass in the form of neutrinos, and you're getting more energy out than it took to create the fusion in the first place. Past iron, that reverses. It takes more energy to fuse beyond iron than you get out of the fusion, which is why fusing past iron tends to only happen in like supernovas. However, this works really well with the requirements of entropy. Even if you take the stars as isolated systems, it still works, right? So you have a bunch of kinetic energy in the gas and dust clouds that form the stars. As they fall in towards the star and convert that potential energy into kinetic energy, you're still reducing the ability of the system to do work because you're getting less thermal energy at any given point than the total amount of potential energy that was originally there because of radiative cooling. Then, after you start fusing hydrogen, you're again, the amount of mass that's lost is actually going to end up being higher if you had converted that into energy too than the amount of energy you're getting out. The whole time... Yeah.
Nelly in 1998 is asking for you to check the milestone/super chat that you missed.
Oh. Oh, there was one from Vandali 1998 that I guess I missed. I'm sorry about that, Vandali 1998. My bad. Vandali 1998, who's been a member for 37 months, which is crazy, man. That's awesome. Says, or is at the amulet level, says, you know how to make Adam's inheritance of sin canon? It was an ERV. Doing your job for you, creationists. There you go. Adam was infected by the sin virus, and it just became an ERV in later humans. Or you could do like some Christian groups do, and not actually believe in the moral culpability for Adam's sin of his descendants. Because it turns out that idea isn't universal to Christianity. You can be a Christian and not believe that, believe it or not. I know. One of the things I like to do in these shows is drive home the degree to which creationists, who are almost all Protestants, like to pretend that their theology is the theology of Christianity, even though it's not, and it never has been like the universally accepted theology in Christianity. Astariu for 199 says, homonyms are a waste of time, but spells waste as if it's the thing that your belt goes on, and time like the ingredient in your food. I like it. All right, here we go.
That is simply not possible. What does that mean? This universe is not an isolated system.
I mean, okay, that's an option, right? Like, but what that means is that there's no longer any physical barrier at all based on the second law of thermodynamics to the formation of life, right? Because the entire point of this is that life can't increase in its complexity because that's some kind of violation of the laws of thermodynamics, even though it isn't, because of the energy gradient. But this just makes that all the more of a problem, because then the universe itself doesn't have to go up in entropy, right? Any part of the universe can now just have decreasing entropy because energy could be coming in from outside. So even if you want to say the source of that energy is God, okay, great. The second law still doesn't apply to the universe as a whole, and it certainly doesn't apply to life. I don't know why he's crapping all over his own proposed problem for evolution. This is very confusing.
There has to be something someone external to the natural universe and independent of it who was responsible for its origin.
Hey, it's almost like when I've named this the stream "Non Sequiturs Prove God." That's exactly what he's doing. Yeah. Not only does that not follow, it's also not actually clear that we need to have an origin for the energy of the Big Bang. It would be psychologically satisfying, I'll say, to have such a thing. But since time doesn't go before that, as far as we can tell, based on general relativity, it could just be that that's just how time starts. And there's not really much of an explanation. That just is. I don't know. I don't find that to be terribly satisfying, but I can't rule it out. So yeah, maybe. And hey, look, I'm not saying that anything here is precluding something that is beyond our universe, which could feed energy into a pocket of space-time, and that thing could even be something with some kind of mind, like a god. I don't know. I don't have evidence either way. I have my own personal beliefs about such things, but they're not relevant, because this is about science and not my personal beliefs that are not based on scientific evidence.
I like Staryu talking about r/bone apple tea being their favorite subreddit. I love that subreddit so much. Bone apple tea. Because it's, play on Bon Appetit.
Yes.
People mishear it. It's great.
For the complexity, organization within it, for the information content of this universe.
Yes, the information content of the universe. So I'm actually, like I said, I'm looking at a talk that was given in at AIG's conference center in the Creation Museum, I believe, this year, 2023. And this talk was given in, what did we figure out, the late 80s?
Sure.
So what, 33 or so years? And in all that time, how many useful definitions of information that actually allow you to measure the information in either the universe or in organisms have creationists proposed? It's none. Literally, they'll just go through things and they'll say, isn't it obvious that this has less information? And no, it's not, right? In this particular video, the speaker said, isn't it obvious that wolves have more information than poodles? No, they have the same number. Actually, poodles, I believe, actually have a few more genes than wolves. They have more muscles than wolves. Dogs, domesticated dogs, actually have extra facial muscles that wolves do not have. And they are used to have more expressive eyes so that humans are nicer to them. It's the whole puppy dog eye thing. Dogs evolved extra muscles to be cuter to humans.
Yeah, we selected for that specifically.
Yeah. And so, okay, so do dogs have less information than wolves? I don't see how. And then there was something oh, look, this a lion has more information than a house cat. And I'm like, is it just because it's bigger versus smaller? What are your criteria here? And nothing, right? No actual attempt. And here's the reason. Because any actual attempt to define information automatically means that we have observed instances of information being generated without the input of an intelligence in our already existing scientific observations. You want to say...
Neoteny. Thank you, Nee. That's the word I was looking for. Neoteny.
For instance, if you want to say that number of anatomical parts is what is information. Okay, well, like I said, everyone accepts that dogs descended from wolves, yet dogs have more anatomical parts than wolves. So I guess dogs increase in complexity. If you want to say it's the number of genes, well, great. We have numerous examples, both in the lab and in the wild, of populations gaining new genes, de novo. If you want to say it's the genome size, take a look at Procambarus virginalis, the marbled crayfish, which was the result of a whole genome, whole genome duplication in Procambarus phallax, which means that the genome size went up by 50% because now it's triploid instead of diploid. That's an increase in information by that definition. If you want to say it's a change in size, bigger means more information than smaller, I'll just look back at dogs where the mastiff is bigger than a wolf. So did information go up in that case? So at every step of the way, there's a fundamental lack of ability by creationists to define this word in a way that allows us to measure information, show that it's always going down according to them, and do anything useful for it. In fact, Dr. Dancer and Cardinal was having a talk on his channel about genetic entropy with a creationist geneticist. And when he asked them to define information, the answer was, well, I don't really think we need to because it's just intuitive. You know how much your intuition matters in science? Like
Not at all.
Not even a little bit. At
Science
best,
and the conclusions that it reaches and the evidence leading you to those conclusions is frequently not intuitive.
At best, intuition can lead you to a hypothesis to test later. That is the absolute best case scenario. And usually, those hypotheses end up being wrong anyway, because again, your common sense or your intuition have very little to do with that, what actually is the case in science. Common sense tells you that the Earth is flat. Common sense tells you that the sun moves through the sky and it's not the Earth spinning. Common sense tells you that heavy things fall faster than light things. None of these things are true. All right, here we go.
To be introduced from the outside. Who is that creator? The God of the Bible.
You haven't even begun to argue that.
God of the Bible.
Yeah, well, I mean, there is the fact that the Bible has more than one God concept contained within it. So first we'll take a drink for that.
For univocality.
But also, let's take another drink for the fact that he hasn't actually argued for any specifically biblical God concept. He's just argued for more of like a Spinoza's like necessary first mover type of God, which is not what most Christians would recognize as their God. So we'll take a drink for that too.
Are talking about Baruch Spinoza, right?
Yes.
Weird, because he's still under harem.
Take that. Now you're no longer Jewish.
It's so funny though. It's like one of the very few instances of someone being, excommunicated or whatever. And he's never not gonna be, because technically the group of people that put you under harem have to revoke it, and well, they're all dead, so sorry, Spinoza. I know. Dang it.
Oh well. If
he didn't care though. He was just like, oh, or whatever.
Yeah.
He just went back to doing whatever.
Right.
Oh man.
Yeah, he just went back to being one of the most famous philosophers of all time.
Yeah.
Like, oh no, this group of rabbis doesn't like my work. Oh, everyone else does,
no,
though.
I don't care.
And hundreds of years later, we remember his name. Do you remember the name of any of the people who decided he wasn't Jewish anymore? I sure don't.
A supernatural creator had to exist.
April Van Ryn.
April Van Ryn.
Excommunication is a serious business. Oh, man. And yeah, technically it's not excommunication. It is ejection from the community. But yeah, technically you can't be excommunicated unless you're a Christian.
Yeah. Because it means putting you out of communion.
Yeah. Like you're no longer allowed to take communion at the church that you were a member of.
Yeah, I'm like, Jews don't take communion, so...
That's true. They don't. Oh, they have plenty of wine-based ceremonies, though.
Yes, we do! This is one of those things, like, the Orthodox go so hard during Passover, like, I can't even get on that level. They drink 4 full glasses of wine.
One of my favorite
little
statistical things is that membership in synagogues went through the roof during Prohibition. Because one of the only ways that you could buy or make, sell, or buy wine was for religious purposes. And I don't know if you know this, but synagogues go through a lot more wine than your average Catholic church does.
Yup.
So, whew.
Yeah.
Yeah. Suddenly everyone's converting to Judaism, quote unquote.
Yeah.
It's the new hip thing. Weird. Also,
it's like the only time in ever that it's been cool.
There were also like grape juice mixes that were sold that gave you explicit instructions on what not to do, because if you did it, you would illegally make wine. So definitely don't do this.
Yeah. Don't do it.
Don't mix in.
It's so funny.
Don't put this in with this amount of sugar. Put it up on a shelf after you put in a little bit of yeast
and leave it to ferment.
No, don't do that.
Don't do that. It's so funny. Like, there's this misnomer that, like, if you decide to convert to Judaism, they turn you away 3 times. That's not a thing. But usually what you'll be asked at some point in the process is, why?
Well, I like
do
getting
you
drunk.
See what we're going through? Like, so, yeah.
Yeah, but the government lets you get drunk.
Yeah.
So, you know. I'll show up for all the parties.
For the origin of this universe. Well, how old is the universe?
You know, like 13.8 billion or so. Sometimes I just say 14 to round it to the nearest billion. You know, about that. Now, to be fair, there is a thing called the crisis in cosmology, which is that certain of our ways of measuring the approximate age of the universe seem to disagree, and we're not sure why or how to harmonize them. So there is the possibility that the universe is actually significantly older than that, but the majority of various techniques to measure the age of the universe say 13.8. And the solution to this crisis in cosmology is actually one of the big open questions in cosmology right now. So I want you to understand that I'm saying 13.8 with, you know, like a tablespoon worth of salt.
An asterisk.
Yeah, there's an asterisk and some salt that you have to eat with it. So, you know, but one of the options that isn't open to us, one of the things that none of the data indicate, is an age of 6 to 10,000 years old. That's not indicated anywhere by anything other than certain texts that certain people take.
Out.
Yeah. Yeah, other than taking, I don't even want to say literally, because obviously young Earth creationists aren't taking Genesis literally. They don't at all. I don't even know what to say, because their hermeneutical principle is so internally inconsistent that I don't know how to put a label on it. So unless you're a creationist type, right, who wants to cherry pick which parts of Genesis they want to take literally and take a larger portion of it than is probably appropriate, there's no reason to think that the Earth is anything less than, you know, like 10.5 or so billion years old. Again, I'm approximating here heavily.
Well, some say it could be eternal.
I mean, that has not been a popular idea since basically the Big Bang was proposed and then shown to have a lot of evidence. Fred Hoyle, who famously was an anti-evolution atheist cosmologist, was a big fan of the steady-state universe, and he actually thought that the Big Bang sounded too much like Genesis. That's one of the reasons he hated it. In fact, he coined the term Big Bang in an interview that he gave, in which he said that the reason he didn't like this new Big Bang theory is because too many of the cosmologists that were proposing it were theists, specifically, in many cases, Christians, who had the book of Genesis too stuck in their minds. Yeah.
You know, evolution would like to believe that, because a beginning, that really gets under their skin. The fact that the universe had a beginning, they don't have any way to explain that.
Yes and no.
That's just the whole field of cosmology, literally trying to do that every day. Good grief.
But also, the fact that you can't take your history of something farther than how far you can take it now does not negate your knowledge of the history that you actually have, right? So, for instance, we can trace back the history of the English language back to people who were living around what's now like Denmark, right? We have Angles, Saxons, some Utes, they're Germanic tribes. They seem to be living near that peninsula, maybe a bit more on the mainland. Okay, and then they come over, they displace a bunch of Celtic groups. This is after the Romans have also messed up the whole Celtic system, and so on and so forth. Now, we don't have any firm records of what Proto-West Germanic was like, which is the ancestor language of basically all the extant Germanic languages. Basically, only Gothic is known to be an Eastern Germanic language that we have any record of, and it's extinct. We only have one source for the entire language, which is one translation of the Bible into Gothic. So that's our entire knowledge of East Germanic. So we don't actually have a whole lot of direct evidence of West Germanic. And then even further, if you go back to Proto-Germanic, we have even less information about that. Having Gothic helps. But, like, we don't know exactly who spoke it, exactly where they lived, and so on and so forth. And we can trace that all the way back to Indo-European, right? Every step of the way, we get less and less information about exactly what was going on, who was doing the talking, what their language was actually like on the ground, what it would have sounded like to hear them speak. But then at that point, we hit a wall. We have not been able to connect Proto-Indo-European to any other languages that it might share common ancestry with, even though it probably did. So does that mean that we don't know anything about the history of Indo-European languages all the way up to modern English? No, of course not. That's stupid, but that's what Dwayne Gish's argument is here. Well, if you can't bring me back to an actual starting point that I personally can accept as making sense, You can't say anything about the entire history of the subject. That's crazy. That's not how anyone treats anything unless they have some kind of, maybe agenda to push that isn't about intellectual honesty or scientific fact. We'll take a drink for that because it's a really bad argument.
Throw out that triangle meme, folks.
Yeah, send in some triangles because this is definitely a triangle time where maybe you can be well informed and creationist, but can't be honest with it.
But also, thank you, Nee, for saying picked or it didn't happen. PICT.
Oh yes, because we're the Celts and Picts or it didn't. Yeah, the poor Picts. Mm-hmm. Not too many Pictish words survived into English. Bin is one of the very few Celtic words that made it into English, and it's probably from Pictish.
How could there be nothing and then there was something?
No one actually knows for certain.
Literally, that's creation ex nihilo, Dwayne.
Yeah, so, a couple things is, one, the Big Bang does not necessitate nothing coming from something coming from nothing. Second, your idea of creation ex nihilo does. So, I'll just take another drink. I'm thirsty. All right, here we go.
They don't like that idea. They like to suggest that the universe is eternal. It can't.
Not anymore, they don't, because that's basically gone. As for Ryu, for $1.99, says, but Proto-Altaic, but Mimivirus. Yeah, Proto-Altaic has basically lost all support, because there's just no actual evidence for it. The evidence that was there was too weak, too circumstantial, and there's really no more working historical linguists who are taking seriously Proto-Altaic. It has not been a fruitful avenue for research. Sorry.
Can't be. You see, if the universe had been here forever, it'd run down a long time ago, wouldn't it?
Not if it's not isolated, like you just said it's not, Dwayne. Does he listen to himself speak?
No.
Okay.
Hasn't run down yet, so it hasn't been here forever. It's just
that does not actually follow if you allow for the universe to be open. Now, personally, I think it's isolated, so that actually does work, and I do think the universe had a time equals 0 point. But okay.
That even the proton would decay with time.
That's still a maybe.
Yeah, we don't know that yet.
Yeah. And if it does decay, the problem is that the half-life is on the order of several trillion years. So how would we ever know?
Yeah.
So
the universe cannot be eternal. Cannot be.
Man, also, this is something that we don't get to talk about this a whole lot because it requires a level of biblical textual literacy that, well, frankly, a lot of Christians and their apologists don't have. Kip Davis notes that he's pretty sure the only evidence for creation ex nihilo as a biblical concept comes from the book of Hebrews because you can't find it in the Hebrew Bible. And that is true because if you go back to Genesis 1 and 2, the grammar there is God taking some materials that kind of are already there and shaping it and making it into something. It's not creation from nothing. So, yeah.
Oh, but where did the something he was shaping come from, huh?
Woo!
Yeah.
Check me, atheist.
Yeah, take that. That just proved Christianity right there.
Oh,
I just did it.
My Unfinished Journey says, remind me about the triangles. So the triangle with a 2 inside of it is referring to a meme where it's got 3 points, and the first one says, well-informed, creationist, and honest, and you can pick at most 2.
Yes, it is a great meme. And we have to simplify it to make it work as an emoji because,
Yeah.
All right, here we go.
Therefore, it had to have a beginning. Isn't that what the Bible says? In the beginning?
Is that what the Bible says? Not really, no. No, it's more when God began to do the thing.
Of course, I'm biased, but I prefer the rendering that I did this past week. And at the commencement of creating the heavens and the earth.
That is a good one.
God created the heavens and the earth. Had to have a beginning. Cannot be eternal.
But the thing is, I agree with him, but he cannot justify that, is the problem.
Yeah.
So it's very weird, because I agree with this conclusion that I don't think the universe can be eternal. I happen to agree with him about that. Now, granted, that comes up with all sorts of weird philosophical problems, and like, I guess I could hand wave them away with a god if I wanted to. Maybe I do. You don't get to know. But like, it's a weird thing, and I'm not a big fan of it. I think the eternal universe would be a more philosophically satisfying idea. But like, Dwayne is somehow simultaneously holding open the possibility of an open universe, and also that it can't be eternal. But the entire reason it can't be eternal is because it seems to be an isolated universe. If it's not, then it can be eternal. So I don't get what he's trying to do here.
Yeah, until we discover other universes, this is all we got to work with, so we can't just jump off and make those assumptions.
Well, all we gotta do is jump into Todash space and try not to get annihilated by the monsters.
Listen, I can go get a dark hold and we can start dreamwalking and see what all the laws of physics are in the other realities, but that's going to take a while.
Alright, well, let's get on it, though. Because you know what? The more we wait, the longer it takes.
Had to have a beginning. People often ask me, well, who created God? Who created the Creator? I says, you have two choices. Either you got to believe in eternal matter or eternal God. You can't believe in eternal matter. Matter cannot be eternal. The only other choice is eternal God.
I actually don't have to believe in either of those, right? I can believe that time just starts at the Big Bang, and it starts with matter, and that being before the Big Bang doesn't mean anything. I can just believe that. Now, I do personally find that a bit unsatisfying, and I feel like that's, it feels like a cop-out, even though I can't say that it's not actually just the way things are. So it's unsatisfying to me on a personal level, but you know how much the universe cares about my philosophical satisfaction? Not at all. Not even a little bit. There's a lot about the universe I find philosophically unsatisfying. That just is how it seems to be.
Yep, too bad though.
Yeah.
The self-existing, self-maintaining, eternal God, and that's exactly what the Bible claims for God. So it cannot be eternal.
Okay. For Dwayne.
Well,
Okay, Dwayne.
Yeah.
how old is the universe? Do you know evolution?
You already asked
Old as
that.
balls.
Older, in fact. Balls did not evolve until well after the universe existed.
Evolutionists, they have a big problem with that. Some say it could be as young as 8 or 9 billion years, and others say it's 15 billion years. So
Those ones are closer to right. Although, like I've said before, we do have to understand that this was probably like the late 80s, and so I'm not gonna like ding him too much for not knowing things that wouldn't be known until the future. Because that's not fair.
they argue back and forth. But they think that at least it's got to be billions of years old.
Isn't it interesting, Dwayne, how all of the people who spend their entire lives dedicated to studying this question, all of them, come up with a number that is orders of magnitude higher than your preferred number, and how none of them ever seem to find any evidence at all that would indicate that your preferred number is correct?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's literally like coming into a room of cartographers, right? Who are, for some reason, discussing the distance between, like, Orlando and Anchorage. And those are two cities, and one's in Alaska in the US and one's in Florida. It's about as far away as you can get without going to Hawaii if you're still in the United States. Anyway. And, you know, they're all like, oh, well, you know, because of, you know, this uncertainty here, I think it's actually this many thousands of miles away and whatnot. And then Dwayne comes in and he's like, okay, but have you considered that maybe it's 14 centimeters away? No, they haven't, actually. Because that's crazy.
Actually, no.
You can just go check. You just look outside and like, nope, not 14 centimeters. That's a little bit tougher with the age of the universe, right? It's a little bit more complicated to figure that out. But like, we're on the same level of error, right? It's the same level of error as thinking that the moon is about as far away from the surface of the Earth as the top of like the Empire State Building in New York. No, it's just not. Even the Flurfs are better at the distance to the moon than that.
Just wow.
Yeah. My Unfinished Journey for $2 says, I just asked the universe. No, it doesn't care. Yeah, no, it doesn't. Yeah. Which now kind of makes me want to do some more, like, cosmic horror stuff. I'm going to find a good cosmic horror movie. Those are so hard to come by.
Endless. I know.
I've already seen it, though. I've seen it several times.
I know. It's so good.
It is really good, though.
I'm actually wearing my Arcadia Brewing Company shirt right now.
Show it.
Speaking of
Stand
the
up.
Endless.
Show it.
Okay, fine.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Good beer.
Mhm.
Good beer.
Did they ever get back to you on whether or not they're going to make that merch that you suggested to them? The directors?
Man, you know I forgot to email them. You know I
Uh-oh.
did. In fact, but hey, that's okay. I got a pencil right here.
Shanti's got an in with
And I'm
Benson and
gonna-
Moorhead. She can actually like get stuff done.
Wouldn't say that. Wouldn't say
And
that.
how do they know that? How do they think they know that?
So there's a number of ways. We measure the age of like the Earth and the solar system with things like radiometric dating, sedimentology, things like that. The universe as a whole, a lot of it has to do with things like redshift, and there's actually an equation where if you know enough of the various factors, you can plug them in, and what you get out is an age. So this equation, whose name escapes me, although it was mentioned in the Kent Hovind King Crocoduck debate, which is annoying me because I normally can remember the name of this equation. It's not the Drake equation, in case anyone's wondering about that. But yeah, like you can factor in like how much energy of what type is in the universe, what the current size of the universe is, the distribution of matter in the universe, how much matter is in the universe, and then an age will pop out. And yeah, it comes out to 14.8 or so billion years. Have I watched Underwater 2020? Yes, I have. I did like the reveal there. I'm not going to spoil it because 2020 isn't that long ago. I do have my complaints about the underwater here and there, but overall, I thought it was a fun movie. And yeah, it had some cosmic horror elements towards the end there. Until then, though, it was a bit of a straightforward like creature feature monster flick. So, but I like those too.
And that's fine, but I kind of want my cosmic to hit a little earlier than like the final act, you know?
Yeah.
So.
What was the one in the hospital?
I say having loved The Void. So.
Yeah, The Void. Yeah. I like that one too. That was like cosmic horror hitting in like the second act, I would say. Like it starts coming in.
Yeah.
Like the first act, you're just like, oh, there's a weird cult. They're going to murder people in the hospital. And by the second act, you're like, oh, no, that's not all that's happening.
Oh! God, I'm so glad that the SAG-AFTRA strike is over because Aaron Poole needs way more work. That dude's great.
Yes, congratulations to the SAG-AFTRA union. Good job, guys. Turns out
solidarity works, y'all.
They couldn't actually starve you out because they need you more than you need them.
Yep.
Weird.
Yeah.
All right, here we go.
Well,
the Friedman equation, that does sound like it might be an intrigue feline. I have no idea why I can't remember this, by the way. Like, I just have no idea.
for example, they believe the universe is expanding.
I mean, because it's been observed to be
It
expanding.
is demonstrably.
I'm just going to take a drink for... Apparently,
wow.
Dwayne has some other explanation for redshift.
Just, what?
Ian Chen
They
official
believe it's expanding?
Ian Chen official for $2.99 redo says Hubble constant, that is involved in the equation I'm thinking of, the Hubble constant. So, yeah, in case you guys didn't know, there's a Doppler effect, right? Just like when you're standing on a roadside, right? And you hear a car approaching you, and as it gets closer to you, the sound starts to go up in pitch. And then as it recedes away from you, the sound goes back down in pitch. That's the Doppler effect. In light, we call that red versus blue shifting. Virtually the entire universe is redshifted, meaning that it is moving away from us. There's a few very close objects, and well, I mean that cosmically speaking, right? Like not
close,
taking a trip down to the corner store close, but like on the scale of the universe, a few very close objects like Andromeda are blue shifted, indicating motion towards us, which means that motion is dominated by gravitational attraction. But the motion of these other objects, which are redshifted, which again is virtually the entire universe, is dominated by the expansion of space-time, which is, for these distances, stronger than the gravitational attraction between the objects, which means they get farther and farther away, reducing the effect of gravity more and more. So, yeah, Dr. Tapioca Weasel says, who are you going to believe, Gish or your lying eyes, ears, and brain? Good question. I should probably believe Gish. He seems like a really smart fella.
Now, most astronomers believe that. And
because of the ubiquity of redshift that you don't have an alternate explanation for, as near as I can tell. Yeah, it's like saying most biologists believe in life forms. Yeah, that's true. They do. What do you know? Oh, man. I met this ichthyologist once who actually believed in fish. Can you believe it?
It could be.
Fake.
The Bible says God stretched forth the heavens.
Yeah, as a tent, which means that he's stretching it out as a
Yep.
dome over a flat piece of land, which is,
Yeah.
the ancient conception of the universe that the Bible was operating on, at least through the entirety of the Hebrew scriptures, because it wasn't until
Dumb it makes your arguments
after
when
that-
you don't bother to learn anything about history or context.
Yeah.
Would be me.
And the thing is, like, it wasn't until after the completion of some of the last parts of the Hebrew Bible that we actually get to the point where, like, Jewish culture comes into a sufficient contact with cultures that had already discovered the Earth was a sphere, that knowledge started to spread into what's now, like, for, I guess, the Judea area or whatever that area was called, into the Seleucids and whatnot, right? It wasn't until, like,
And
Greek
I've
hegemony.
I was going to say in the Hellenistic period, the Greeks, having done experiments to prove that the Earth is round and determine its circumference to a pretty accurate degree, considering these ideas were actually discussed in the Talmud. Like, they have an entire section where they're like, hey, we think the sun goes outside the dome at night, traverses the dome, and then comes back in on the other side. The Greeks say that the sun goes below the Earth, but the Greeks are right.
Yeah, they're
And I'm
they're
like,
probably right.
yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Dr. Kip, what isn't working for you? Let me know. Tag me, and I'll see if I can.
Oh, he's trying to add April Van Ryn on Discord.
Oh! I don't know that I can help
Usernames
with you.
get wonky because they made everybody get rid of the discriminators after their names, which is freaking ridiculous. So trying to add people gets really unnecessarily convoluted.
Well, I'm not saying it's impossible, but there are.
Okay, Ian Chen says, for $2.99 reviews, inverse of Hubble is T equals 1 over H. Thought it was it. Oh, there you go. I mean, that does get you a T when you put it that way. Yay for algebra.
Other astronomers who do not believe the universe is expanding.
Who? Is it your creationist bunch? Is it them?
But they say this, that those
No, we don't get any examples. Why would
Yeah,
you
just
cite
give me one.
examples? There's some people who totally agree with me.
Until we meet again!
My favorite astronomers go to a different school. You wouldn't know them.
Yeah, you wouldn't know.
those galaxies and those stars are out there for millions and billions of light years away. That is, there are galaxies out there that are 10 billion light years away. That is, it would take 10 billion years for light to get from that galaxy to the Earth.
The fact that we can see it on its own seems to indicate that the universe must be at least 10 billion years old there, Dwayne. Because there's this whole thing that you might have learned about in, like, I don't know, 4th grade, well, maybe 5th, called the distance triangle, where you have speed and distance and time. And if you know any two of them, you can figure out the other one. So if you know the distance to an object and you know the speed at which light travels from that object, because it's always constant, you can figure out the time. And it turns out that conveniently, the time it takes for light to go 10 billion light years is 10 billion years. Which means if you can see something 10 billion light years away, how long ago did that light start out? 10 billion years ago. Which means how long ago did the universe have to exist for you to see that light? 10 billion years. Wow! Fun times.
How about that?
And our only other option is just God's a liar. That's literally the only other option. For creationists, at least. Alright, they do have a few other options besides that, but all of them still seem to end up with God being a liar, just in slightly less philosophically problematic ways.
Others have ages in millions or distances of millions of light years. So they say,
Yes, Dwayne, things come at different distances in the universe. That's true. We'll take a drink. He's right about that.
Lucky shot.
of course, the universe cannot be young, it's got to be old. But, you
Yes.
know, they don't believe the Bible.
Some of them do.
Some do. The
I
heck?
feel like the guy who...
Didn't he just say that he's not calling all people who believe in evolution atheists?
Well, to be fair, you don't have to believe in the Bible to be a theist.
I know. I'm just to
So,
him.
Maybe he's like, there
There's no
are
difference.
Muslim astronomers who believe in the old Earth, but no Christian ones. Except,
No.
That guy, Georges Lemaitre, who was, the Jesuit priest who first proposed the Big Bang.
Yeah, well, they're the wrong kind of Christian, therefore they're not Christians, therefore they don't count.
Yeah, but if you ask them, do you believe in the Bible? I guarantee you that he would have said yes. It's kind of hard to be a Catholic and then be like, the Bible is... Well, I'm pretty sure he's dead.
Yeah, pretty sure.
But if I asked a bunch of other Jesuits, I'm pretty sure they would agree that they are, big fans of the Bible and that they think it's one of the primary sources for their teachings and doctrines and whatnot. Not the only source, right? Because they're big fans of, the collegium of the church and the various councils of various bishops and the church tradition and whatnot. But all of those things themselves reference back to what's in the scriptures. So, yeah. Plus, at least they're not lying to themselves about sola scriptura, because no Protestants are actually practicing sola scriptura. So I'm going to give the Catholics that. They're at least not pretending that they only use the Bible, because no one only uses the Bible. Not even Dwayne Gish. Dwayne Gish is firmly in a extra-biblical interpretive tradition that predates him and significantly postdates the Bible.
I've never, to this day, met a Protestant who says that they're sola scriptura and then doesn't immediately turn around and say, well, the church father said this. Like, oh, so you're not then. Okay,
even the ones who might not do that, still, Protestant hermeneutic principles are themselves a tradition that you have to choose to accept in order to interpret the Bible that way. So, yeah, sola scriptura is just impossible. And it's one of my two big problems with Protestantism. The other one is the perspicuity of the scripture, because if anything is obviously wrong, it's the perspicuity of the scripture. Which is the idea that, what the Bible says is just pretty obvious, and anyone who comes to it with an open mind, honestly, will come to the same conclusions. And then I look around at the world, and I'm like, lol, okay.
What does the Bible tell us? God created stars to be for signs and seasons on the earth.
Then why are so many of them, in fact, the vast, vast majority of them, completely useless for that? Because no one can see them without high-powered scientific equipment, which means no one can use them to know when to plant their wheat crops. Because remember, when the Bible says these are for signs and seasons, what it ultimately means is you can look into the night sky and say, okay, I can see these stars rising on this day, and that means that the planting season is probably this many weeks away. And then later on in the year...
Why do you think it is that the major Jewish holidays fall coinciding with agricultural milestones in the year? Planting, harvesting.
It's almost like it's an agriculturally dominated society that was focused on things like not starving to death. Yeah. And that's the signs and seasons that the Bible is talking about, right? You look up into the sky, and if you know what you're doing, which most ancient people did because it was a life or death matter, you could determine based on what stars you could see at what time of year, how far you were from harvest, from planting, from needing to, plow, rotate your crops, whatever, by looking into the sky.
Comes the rainy season!
Yeah, that's why societies the world over had astrologers. Who, granted, they disagreed about all the weird stuff about, like, oh, you're born under this science, this means your personality is going to be like that. They all disagree with that. But they were all taking careful note.
Israel.
They were all taking careful note of things like solstices, equinoxes, when growing seasons started and ended, and things like that. Because it was life and death for these people. But a galaxy 10 billion light years away, you know what use that is to an Iron Age farmer? Literally none. Not a lick. That 10 billion light year away galaxy will not be useful for a sign for any season at all, because you just can't see it. You can't even see most of the stars in the Milky Way. The visible bubble of stars in the Milky Way is a tiny fraction of the stars that are actually in the Milky Way. So, I'm sorry, but this just doesn't work out. Unless you want to say that
that's one of those things about astronomy that just gives me absolute existential dread, is you look at an ostensibly empty patch of space, and you get increasingly denser fields of stars the better the resolution gets.
It's like deep
you
into
zoom
that
in with
darkness
Hubble,
peering.
and you're like, oh wow, look at all these galaxies. And then, you get the James Webb Space Telescope, and you look between all those galaxies, and there's even more galaxies and stars, and you're just like, eh!
Yeah. Yeah, it just keeps going. When you zoom in on space, you just get more fainter stars. You don't get space between the stars.
More stuff. Like,
yeah,
yeah.
It's pretty good. It reminds me of one of my favorite lines from Poe, which was deep into that darkness peering, long I stood there, wondering, fearing, doubting, dreaming dreams no mortal ever dared to dream before, from The Raven. It's like, yeah, that's kind of how it feels when you think too much about what space is like. Again, I need more cosmic horror.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And to determine years and days and seasons and so forth.
That's where we're going to end up with him just repeating that point that we already just covered. We're going to start wrapping this up. I'm going to be doing Power Rangers over on my Discord server after this. We are in the middle of Lightspeed Rescue. So, if you like Lightspeed Rescue, where the Power Rangers are basically government-funded emergency responders who are open to the public, everyone knows who they are, and they're fighting actual demons, then tune in for Lightspeed Rescue. It's definitely a different season compared to what came before it. Because they're not even playing around. Like they're like, oh no, the demons are back, and they want to restore their demonic palace, which happens to have originally been built under our city.
That sounds like some rip and tear is needed.
Yeah, the Doom guy would be a welcome addition to Power Rangers Lightspeed Rescue. There's the crossover.
Can you imagine the Doom guy as a Power Ranger? That'd be incredible.
It would be pretty great. There you go. There's an idea for my next tabletop RPG. Power Rangers, but it's in the Doom universe.
Power Rangers, but in the Doom universe.
Or the Doom multiverse, I suppose.
Oh my god.
Yeah. All right, so that is coming up over there.
OP, please nerf.
Let's take a look at what else is coming up. On Tuesday, we are doing the next Kent with Bent. It is already scheduled. It is the Kentrix Reloaded because I am lazy and I'm going to go through the 3 sequels because now there's a 3rd sequel. So let's see. That is going to be on the 14th of November. Then on Thursday the 16th, we're starting a new series. This one is about Doug Batchelor, a Seventh-day Adventist creationist apologist guy. In several of my thumbnails, I have a little hole cut out of his forehead so you can see the tiny little brain in there because that is my estimation of how big his brain must be. Which, on the bright side, makes him basically immune to concussions. So, I mean, yeah, because how's that brain going to slam into the side of his skull? It's just going to slow down as it swims in that ocean of cerebral fluid. Immune to concussion.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, and then on Saturday, currently the plan is just to do another one of these. We still have 48 minutes worth of Dwayne Gish to get through.
Okay.
You know that mostly it's just an excuse to make fun of creationists, and then we end up talking about movies sometimes. It's fine. We'll be fine.
He's just painful to listen to.
Well, he shouldn't have had a name that is similar to the first syllable of your online screen name. Or maybe you shouldn't have chosen an online screen name that had the same first, or a very similar first syllable to his last name. That too.
I'll talk to Stan Lee, who came up with this in his Doctor Strange comics.
There you go.
Taking it straight up out of the Bhagavad Gita.
I mean, it's not like Marvel has been shy about pilfering from various world religions.
Yeah. I mean, Doctor Strange came about as a direct result of the psychedelic movement in the 60s, so, you know.
And there's this one here you might have heard of called Thor.
Mm-hmm.
There's literally a god out of Norse paganism. I was like, no, that's a superhero now. I'm like, oh, okay. Interesting. And sometimes...
And Hercules.
Yeah, and Hercules. And sometimes they even have, like, regular old jobs. Like, didn't Thor originally work for a newspaper or something lame like that?
Yeah, well, it's because he has his, like, human doctor form.
Yeah. It's still lame. Let's be a god of thunder.
I mean...
More fun.
Well, he has a day job, too.
What do you need a day job for? What, to pay for things? Like, you can't just go to Asgard and get the things you want? What does he need to buy? Like, new goblets because he crushed all of his? I have a very high goblet fund because of my destructive drinking practices. Not destructive to my liver, just destructive to the goblets.
Well, this is also because, like, early on, superheroes needed to, like, have a secret identity.
True.
So
it was the universal
that's why
trope.
Yeah, this is why like Iron Man was Tony Stark's bodyguard initially and stuff like that. So
actually, I appreciated that choice that Robert Downey Jr. actually chose to make. That was his call when he was like, "No, I am Iron Man." Because originally he was gonna be like, "No, it's my bodyguard." That was in the script, and then he was just like, "Screw it, it's me."
He's like, "Nah,
we're changing it up."
He's so good.
Yeah,
that was just.
Anyway, so that's what's coming up in the next week or so. I hope to see all of you for Tuesday, and I hope to see at least a bunch of my members in the Discord for Power Rangers. But with that, we're going to get out of here, and I hope you all have a safe rest of your weekend. Talk to y'all later. Hey, before you leave, I just want to take a second to thank my patrons and channel members, especially those pledging $20 or above. Benthoven, Phil Rivara, Tapioca Weasel, Whispers, Denny5252, Ellerhan Teller, Ian Chen, Kelvin Brostick Van Manen, Landon Knoll, Maddie Babby, Monkey They Them, Sphincter of Doom, Ita V, Strawberry Vein, and Star Runner. It's because of my channel members and patrons whom you're seeing on screen that this channel can stay afloat. Without you, it would all shut down. If you want to join the team, there's a link to join the channel below this video, and there's a link to join the Patreon in the description. On the Patreon, you can get a 10% discount for pledging annually, and either way, you get early access to virtually all of my scripted videos, often 3 to 5 months before they come out for the general public. Thanks for watching.